church should be the best place to have your worst day.
Mm.
So when 2-3 years ago, when church became our worst day, we had to decide what we were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would have been so easy for us to go, well, okay, we've been hurt. We're going to back off. That's
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And I got let go on a Thursday, and I rang a really good friend of mine who was a pastor, probably the last.
What is it that you're hoping for? What is it that you're waiting for? Hey, welcome back to the Inspire Hope podcast, where we are planting hope for kingdom growth. If you're still alive today, that God is not done with you yet. The ultimate gift is to say yes to Jesus. There's nothing more inspiring than God being at work in people's life through their stories. We are Samuel and Rachel, and we are the host of this podcast.
And today I have with me Pastor John. Pastor John, how are you doing, man?
Okay. Not much more than that, to be honest. Last night, been an interesting 12 hours, but beyond that, an interesting couple of weeks as well. But I'll talk a bit more about that later. But last night, we found out some devastating news that a friend of ours, he's a policeman, incredibly good guy, good, honest, integrous Christian man, committed suicide. And it was,
man.
yeah, it was emotional, still is.
Yeah.
Been in contact with his wife, and just very briefly, obviously, she's got a whole heap of stuff going on at the moment. It only just happened yesterday, and just off the back of that, reached out to a couple of other friends who are in the police force in this area as well. They obviously had already heard very quickly. Just reached out to say how you doing, just thinking about you guys and praying for you as well. So it's been an emotional 12 hours. And off the back of, so Friday, we had a funeral in the church of one of our, well, she was a staff member. She'd been a staff member for about 10 years, I think. And she was our finance manager. And my actual first staff meeting, sat down, and she just said, I need to tell everyone I've got stage 4 cancer. This was sort of April last year, I think.
Oh, man.
And just did the journey with her and the ins and outs, and getting better, but then getting worse. And she died a couple of weeks ago. So did her funeral, incredible funeral. She was a funny woman. I think she was more English than Canadian because of her sarcasm and barbed sense of humor. So we got on really well. Then Saturday, went to another funeral.
Oh, man.
Friend of mine, I meet with him and another couple of guys for a Bible study. And two weeks ago, again, around about the same time, found out that his wife had been killed she got hit in a car park in Mexico. They were there for his 60th birthday, and so went to the funeral for that as well. So it's been an interesting weekend. And then Sunday, incredible Sunday service. After the service, went to a birthday party for a 95-year-old lady. She's in a care home now and used to be part of church. So it was tribute after tribute after tribute. So it's been a bit of I guess a roller coaster of emotions the past few days.
I bet.
Yeah. So
But let me ask you, Pastor John. It's kind of like a season of death all around you. What is that season teaching you right now?
Yeah, good question. So many things really, but there's not a lot. There's things that we can control and things that we can't.
Yeah.
And this sounds so trite to say it, but how do we make the time that we have here count? Not just in terms of success, but in terms of family and our faith and walk with God, walk with each other, all of those things that are very difficult at times to quantify and put a number on, measure, but are actually measured in a very different way. And so just thinking about that. God, what do you want me to accomplish? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to be? Those type of things that I guess come to your mind when you're dealing with the death of people and reflecting on your own life. Even I remember years ago, and I used to read this book every year for a while, and it's a book called The Resilient Life of a Leader by Gordon MacDonald. And he talks about the different questions that are asked during the decade, and he sort of brings out as well one of the questions that I think it's Stephen Covey talks about in his 7 Habits of Effective Leaders. Is that right? Highly effective leaders. What do you want people to be saying around your grave? And because I just thinking those things through. What is it? What do I want people to say about me? At my time, when my time's up, and we don't know when that is.
Exactly.
Gina was young, she was slightly older than me, but she was still youngish in today's day and age. My police friend was probably a bit younger than I am. Nora, Terry's wife, was just a bit older than me. So that you still don't know. And as a pastor, I've buried too many young people, been with parents as they've buried their kids. And that's not the natural order of life. So, Sorry to start off on a morbid.
No, but that's life, and it's not always shining and rosy. And this is why I like what we do in this podcast, because there might be so many other people who might be going through losses, right? And they kind of like, how do you keep going? Like, my friend just like an example, my friend committed suicide, my wife did this, or like so much is going on in the world. Like, how do they cope with that, right? What are they thinking? What's going on? Is it, but you just slow down and saying, okay, what is the big question that I need to ask? Right? Like, go ahead.
Sorry. I remember one of the church that we planted back in the UK. I get a tap on the window at our house at 2 a.m. in the morning, and it was a friend, and she'd been trying to get in touch with us. And at the time, I always used to turn my phone off when we went to bed. And so found out that one of our young guys, we'd all been to a wedding the day before. One of the young guys, on the way home, his car had turned over. He'd hit some standing water and just flipped his car into a tree, and he was killed nearly instantly. And just backwards and forwards, went down to the hospital, dealt with the police, and I was just on my way yet again to the family house to be with the parents on that later on that morning. And there was a radio DJ, and he had a bit of a talk in, and he was a well-known sort of, I guess, antagonist against Christians. Nice guy, but just really against Christians. And as I talked, there was someone complaining about the traffic, and I never do the talking. I hardly respond to arguments on Facebook. It's just I'm just giving you time that I don't, brain space I don't give you. But I just thought, oh man, I've got to respond to this guy, because they were complaining about, I don't know how I can deal with traffic. And I was like, let me just tell you about my morning so far. Just talked about, going to the parents, going to the morgue, coming back to the parents, waiting for the police, going home, coming back, all of that stuff. And I said, that's the morning I've had so far. And he just went quiet, and then he said, how do people cope with that? And it was so interesting. And I just said, look, I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm a pastor of the church. And, the two things that I know that I personally, because this young guy was a friend, I was his pastor, I was friends with the family. So, and he was a well-known guy in the church because he was been wild in his youth, and everyone knew him. And so I had to deal with my own grief, the family's grief, and the church grief. And I said, there's only two things that I know that we are relying on. I said, the first is our faith in Jesus.
Yeah.
and the Holy Spirit is our comforter. And I said, but, you know, there's also the physical aspect of the church, the body of Christ. And those two things are how we keep going. Sometimes we're carried, sometimes we're walking, sometimes we're carrying others, and sometimes we're just being dragged.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it is at times. And I said, those are the two things that really help us keep going. And our faith in Jesus and the love of the community around us, that is the tangible hands and feet of Jesus. Yeah.
Did he reply back, or?
He was actually very, very nice, very complimentary. He wasn't antagonistic, because I think he realized the gravity of the moment as well, and just what we as a community were just going into at that stage. He was very respectful, and I can't remember his exact words, but I think he just sort of talked about depending on each other as a community. So yeah,
because the truth is, the bottom line, we are all human.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not, or a different denomination, different religion. We are all human. We have blood circulating in our vein. Like when something like this happened, even though you were against or for, you put everything aside.
Yeah.
To come in. If you need to cry with the person, you cry with them. If you need to pray with them, you pray with them. Whatever you need to do, you put everything aside, because we are, the bottom line, we are human.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, Pastor John, I hear an accent, and I do have one too, right? But tell us a little bit about you, where you grew up, in the world that shaped you.
Yeah. So mine's a strange accent. Is yours a Winnipeg accent, or is it more Steinbeck?
Mine is, let me tell you, man, you just opened a can of worms here. So I went to Bible college. Okay, I'm from Haiti.
Yeah.
I went to Bible college in Saskatchewan, where I got to hang out with a lot of Mennonite students. Okay, so my accent is a part of Mennonite. And then I went to Alberta, to Cochrane, to get my Master's in Divinity. And all my profs, they are Southerners.
Right.
And I married an ex-Hatterite. So if my accent is not Haitian, my accent is not Winnipeggers. I don't know what it is. It's
yeah, it's like mine. So just as you were saying that, were you at Millar?
I was at Millar.
So do you know Dr. Darrell Croker?
I do not.
Oh, okay. He might have been thereafter, I think. I used to work with him in my previous World Serve Ministries, but I know John knows him quite well. So, but anyway, my accent is, I was born in the northeast of England in a place called Stockton-on-Tees, and it was the birthplace of railways. So if you're wondering why all the railways across the world have a certain width to the track, because they are all the same, it's the width of a gate. And that came out of Stockton-on-Tees. Stockton to Darlington Railway was the first passenger railway in the world. So there's a bit of history. It was the first place that the safety match was struck as well.
I did not know that.
Yep. But so I was born there, but at 18 months old, my dad got a job as a teacher in Labrador. So we upped sticks and moved to Labrador, which it still is sort of the middle of nowhere, but then was even more the middle of nowhere. We stayed there. We also moved on to Newfoundland. My sister was born in Newfoundland, and we lived there for 6 years. Then we moved back to the UK when I was about 7, and moved in a few different places. Burgess Hill down in Kent, and then Folkestone, Hemel Hempstead. Then I moved to Australia, lived there for a couple of years. And somehow, I have no idea why, and don't even want it, but there is a remnant of the Australian accent in my voice. So I've got a bit of Aussie there, a bit of Northeast England, a bit of London. I don't think I've picked up any Canadian, but my kids definitely are sounding very Canadian. So I have 3 kids. Judah is 15. Jordan is 21. She's turned 21 a couple of weeks ago, and they're both here in Canada with us. And then Taya she stayed in the UK. She was at university studying to be a teacher, came out of university, taught for a year, and then decided she wanted to travel. So she's in Australia at the moment, in Sydney, doing what I did at about the same age, just enjoying herself and doing a bit of work, lying on the beach. I used to do a lot of water skiing and surfing. I don't think she's doing too much of that because she's scared of sharks. So my accent is probably a bit like yours, all over the place.
Yeah. Okay, so how did you come to know Jesus? Now you're a pastor, but there was a time where you were not.
My journey, after teaching, my dad became a pastor, and so I grew up in church. Always been part of my memory being in church, and I never wanted to be a pastor. It wasn't hey, I hate this so much, I don't want to ever do it. It was just never in my career path. Never really considered that this is something I want to do. But as I grew up, we're mainly part of small, medium-sized churches, and overall, it was a pretty good experience of church. Still, church politics and people and get away, but I don't think I ever really had a good understanding of justification by faith, really, in terms of what the standing that God has placed me in, and my sins are forgiven, past, present, and future. And so in my thinking, I'm thinking, well, on the law of averages, if Jesus comes back, he's probably going to find me sinning. So what's the point in trying? And I went away from church at probably 17, 18. I left school at 16 and started working. And never, I wouldn't say that I did anything bad, particularly. I just made other things my God. I got involved, as I say, in water skiing and coaching, and made sport and girls my twin gods, and that was it. That was my life for a while. And so my church journey wasn't particularly bad. It was very thankful for the faith that my parents instilled in me, and the teaching and the community. And a few years ago, I remember, I thought, I need to find my old Sunday school teacher and just thank him, because he did so much with nothing. There was about 3 or 4 of us young teenage guys, and he just sat us in this little office and taught us. He taught us numbers. I remember him being so enthusiastic about numerology in the Bible, and what 3 meant, and what 7 meant, and what 40 meant, and all of those things. And at the time we go, well, I remember them, and I just wanted. I wrote to him and I said, "You may not think what you did bore fruit, but I want you to know that I'm pastoring, and my wife and I planted a church with 9 people in Starbucks, and saw it over about 16 years grow to about 900 people. And I said, I want you to know you had a major part in my faith formation. He may not have seen it. It may felt like he was pulling teeth with this obnoxious pastor's kid, but yeah, I just felt I needed to let him know and thank him for that as well.
Yeah.
And then as I walked away from church, making other things my God, there was a gradual pull back. I went to Australia, as I say, and met a guy who was my youth pastor at the time, and then became my pastor. He moved to London and many years later, and we just stayed in touch, and he really helped form me and slowly bring me back to faith, I would say, but also to church, and to love church, and to see the value of church as well. And then, but in the meantime, a quick overview of my life. I came back to the UK Was without a job for a little while, was
Mm-hmm.
applying for jobs, got involved in some residential care with offenders, and then found that that really was what I wanted to do, not necessarily with offenders, but just that social care type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And went to university, got my social work qualifications, and then became a child protection social worker, and thought that was my career. And God had other plans.
Okay.
So was involved in church at that stage. My wife was a teacher, met her in church, and and then we both felt that we wanted to move from London up to the northeast and plant a church.
Mm-hmm.
Had no idea what we were doing, which was
Well,
in some ways a good thing, I think.
yeah, because God is the
Yeah.
one leading. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd been managing for a while, managing a team, went back to social work on the ground level just to be able to earn some money in the northeast and
Mm-hmm.
plant the church at the same time. So was bivocational for a while, and then came out of that and went full-time pastoring.
Okay.
And yeah.
So a quick question for you here. So the friend who brought you back to Christ, when he started talking to you, tell me what was going on in your head, in your heart.
Yeah, good question. I mean, this was like, I was 21 at the time, so, and I'm 58 now.
Mm-hmm.
That was a long time ago. But I think he just came along. I was teaching water skiing, and he would just come down to the water ski park where I worked, and he would ski. He loved skiing as well. We would just hang out. He was youth pastoring. He'd take a few of us out after church and go to
Mm-hmm.
McDonald's, and we'd hang out and just did life together. There was no in-depth, like all the time now, looking back, it was discipleship, but it wasn't, hey, let's sit down and do a formal discipleship or mentoring contract. There was no program. It was, how you doing? Let's talk about life. How's work going? You know, and I was still stupid and getting girlfriends I shouldn't. And he just kept faith in me and kept bringing me back. Yeah.
That is powerful. Just like in my life as well, there's a man who was like a dad to me, because my dad rejected me even before I was born.
Right.
So this man was like a dad to me. And I don't remember he sat me down. I don't even remember a day where he sat me down and kind of like teaching me this, teaching me that. It's just like he did life with me.
Yep.
And as I'm like he is a pastor, but as I'm doing life with him, I'm just like observing how he talked to people, how he helped people, and I'm just like, I want to be like this guy, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you can become more curious to know why you the way you are, and then you ask questions, and then he start giving you answers. I'm kind of like, and I think that one of the things I learned as well, I was a youth pastor for many years, and youth will trust you when they feel like you're on their team, like you are there to support them. You're not just there to get a paycheck, but you truly love and care about them, and you just do life with them. And as you're doing life with them, you telling them about what God has done in your life, and then they kind of like, this is interesting, and they become more curious, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So tell me about that church you started in the UK.
So we were so Gary was my youth pastor in Australia, and he moved to London in 1999 to take on the church that was already there. There was probably about 100 people in that church, and my wife and I made the decision when we found out that he was moving across that we wanted to move down to London and be part of the church, and serve him and his wife. And so we did that. We moved down to London. The church at that time was probably about 100 people, and it was called Christian Life Centre London. And it later became Hillsong London. And in the time that we were there, it grew from 100 people to about 6,000 people in 5 years.
Wow.
We weren't trying to do anything. There was no branding. It wasn't even sort of the Hillsong phenomenon that it came, and and the rift that had happened. I can say that, but we just built a church that people wanted to bring their friends to, and it wasn't overcomplicated. There was no conferences. It was just, we did church on Sunday, and we did small groups midweek. And probably the only other thing at the time that we did was welcome to church parties. It was like, how do we get these people that keep turning up on a Sunday with their friends? How do we get them connected into the life of the church? And we just didn't know what we were doing. And out of that, we started to learn leadership, and Gary would gather us as leaders and just built into us over that period of time. And there was phenomenal growth, not because we tried to. Yeah. We actually were just trying to cope with the growth as it happened rather than create growth. And so, but in that time, my wife and I both felt, wouldn't it be amazing if we could do something like this in the Northeast? And so I sat with my pastor, Gary, and, we'd been friends for a long time, still are friends now. And I said to him, when we moved to London, we came down to serve you, and we committed ourselves to serving you and Kathy. But this is what's on our heart about planting a church in the Northeast. If you say no and you feel it's the wrong thing, we'll go with that. Yeah. He wasn't telling us what to do. We just said, we made a commitment to you. And if you say don't go, we're okay with that. We'll deal with that. But I just wanted you to know what was on our heart. And he thought about it and prayed about it. And he came back to me and he said, go with our blessing. When you won't be a Hillsong church or anything like that, but go, know that we're releasing you and blessing you on your way. And so we went to the Northeast, gathered 9 people. I literally, how do we start a church?
Yeah.
So I just chatted with a few friends and said, I'm going to go to Starbucks and I'm going to ask the manager if we can use one of the little alcoves down there. And the manager said, I remember him distinctly saying, I don't care what you do, as long as you buy coffee. So I had a friend there for the first Sunday. He actually later moved up and was part of the church, but he came up for that Sunday, and he stood at the door of Starbucks welcoming people in, and people were walking in and, what's this guy at the door doing?
Yeah, what?
We were just the welcome team on a Sunday, and we did that and welcomed people downstairs and all. It was funny, and then it didn't last long there. Yeah, we moved to a couple of different venues, and people brought their friends, and sometimes we grew forward, sometimes we grew backwards. But we just built something that reflected the city. I love sport. I love my rugby. I love football, the proper football, not this stuff that they call football in North America.
I'm with you.
And wrongly called soccer. Listen, we invented the game. We know what it's called.
I'm with you on that.
So we Newcastle, where we were, is just nuts about football. And so I said, I want a church. I want to build the church that reflects the passion of the city, and where people can be in the presence of God and express that same passion that they would on the football terraces that they can in the house of God. And so, full of life and full of expression, and so we just did that, and people brought their friends, and we grew over a period of time, and I was still, in the early days, as I said before, I was still doing my social work. My wife was teaching, and eventually I was able to come on staff, and then a few years later, my wife, was able to give up teaching, and as we had some staff members, but we just wanted we wanted to build a church in terms of expression and life that people wanted to be at and would talk about on a Monday. But also a church that reflected, I'm trying to, without, yeah. So Ephesians 4:11 talks about, Jesus himself gave some to be prophets, some to be apostles, that verse. But it goes on to say, so that the church, I can't remember there, to build up the saints so that the church could come to maturity. And we get so caught up in the individualistic aspect of, well, what am I? Do I have this gifting? Do I have that gifting? Do I do Enneagram? Do I do Myers-Briggs? All of that stuff. And we lose, especially that bit, we lose anything I am or do is there for the building of the church. And so how do I equip the saints to do what they are supposed to do, not what we should professionalize? And so, youth pastors, musicians, kids church pastors, if they're doing, our kids church pastor in Newcastle, a guy called Dan, and absolutely love him to bits. He was awesome, but he was a wild guy as well. And he was never on staff, but he was kids church pastor for about 120, 130 kids. You wouldn't have that here. He did a master's, he got married, he had kids, all whilst being a kids church pastor, because we put high emphasis on team. And did we overdo it? Probably. Were we understaffed? Absolutely. But it built such a strong community within the church, and guys involved, and young people involved in leading and doing things at a high level. And that's what we tried to build over there.
Hey, this is Inspire Hope Podcast, where we share real stories of how God is moving in people's lives. If this encourages you, please consider subscribing. My team just let me know that over 80% of our viewers aren't subscribed. And it's one of the simplest ways you can support this ministry, because we are grateful to have you with us. And now, let's go back to the show. I did church planting for a couple of years. It wasn't easy, okay? Especially when you were the guy who need to do setup, you need to do communion, you need to do worship. Like, I will literally put the guitar down and grab the Bible and preach.
Yeah.
And then after the service, I'm the guy who need to pile all the chairs and put them away.
Yeah.
Right. It is a hard thing.
It is.
Yeah. So my question for you, how did you see God's faithfulness during that time in your life personally, in your family, and the church?
Yeah, as you say, it wasn't easy, but one of the things we were able to do was say to people, look, if you want to be part of this church, and if we want this to work, then we are in this together. That's it. I was working full-time, my wife was working full-time, so we used that as a really key strength to say, we're not here to do everything. If we want to be looked after, we got to look after each other.
Yeah.
Pastor is not going to visit every single person that's around and in hospital and do counseling and all of that sort of stuff. I do enough of that at work. I don't want to come home and have to do that. And I didn't say all. We built an environment and a culture where we're in this together. We do this together. And for me personally, I love the physical aspect of church building. We had a 4-hour setup on a Sunday eventually, because we bumped in and out of a building, and our garage was literally stocked to the ceiling. We had shelving, our speaker system, crossing. The guys would turn up at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning to load the truck. And I'd be forever going, shh, keep quiet, the neighbors are going to hear us. But it built strength in, especially with the guys, because the guys were doing something physical to help build
Yeah.
church. They weren't
Yeah.
sat around, waiting for something to happen. They were doing something, banging the truss in together, putting it up, getting the speakers flowing, putting the lights up, laying the cables, all of that. Everyone was involved in doing that. Now, in the early days, he didn't do that with 9 people or 100 people, but everyone got involved, and we built that right from the beginning. And so trying to build this thing that is, it is a community. It is, we work with each other and for each other. And we had some hard decisions to make as a family. When we moved up to Newcastle, we had 2 kids. Taya was 2.5, and Jordan had, I think, how old was she? She was 5 months old. Taya would have been 3, I think, when we moved up to Newcastle. And I went from being quite a decent wage earner as a social worker to I dropped, I'm trying to think in dollars, I probably dropped $30,000 in wages. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Yeah. Yeah.
And God was just faithful in those times. And, we got a great place that we were able to rent and all of that sort of stuff. But we gave our lives to it, and we encouraged other people to give their lives well. And thinking back, God was just faithful in all of that. There were no big miracles. It was just God saw us through that time.
Yeah.
And we did get to a stage where one of the guys, Andrew, he ran our production at the time, just said to me, "John, you're more of a hindrance during setup than a benefit. Now, please go prepare your message. Stop annoying people." Like, oh, I really like that.
So they basically own it. It's their baby, and they will. Yes, they own the show. They own the show.
Yeah.
So, John, you moved to Canada. I don't know how many years ago. I mean, probably you if you remember, you're gonna tell us. I remember when I moved to Canada by myself, and oh man, it wasn't easy. It was tough because I moved to Saskatchewan, and I have nothing against Saskatchewan, but boy, put the Haitian in Saskatchewan, in Pembroke, where, no word of a joke, John, if you want to see another black guy, you need to drive for 45 minutes to Swift Current. Probably to see another black guy. So wherever I am on campus, or let's say 15 minutes away, if you can see a black person, it's Sammy. Like, anywhere you look, I stood out. But hey, I enjoy my time there, but the transition was really hard.
Yeah.
So tell me about your transition to Canada.
So I'll take a step back a bit further just to tell you why. If we got to a stage in the church as we built it and saw it grow, and we got to a stage where it was like, is there another adventure? And there was a lot of stuff going on, and it was a great church, incredible people. And the young associate pastor, I knew that he had great leadership capacity within him. And I didn't want to get to 60 and he feel that he'd had to leave to step into a more significant role within the church. And so I just thought, well, it's either him or me. And if I get to 60, then I've got to find another him. And I didn't want to do that, because he come into church, got saved, got filled with the Holy Spirit, grown, discipled. He'd done our internship, all the things, all the steps, and just amazing young guy. And I thought, maybe it's us then. Maybe it's us that need to leave, not him. So we began to push some doors, and it took a long time, but this place came up in Saskatoon, the
Mm-hmm.
church that we came over for, and it got right down to the last two of us, and I just thought this isn't going to happen, because
Mm-hmm.
I'd sort of done a bit of research on the other guy. He was a homegrown guy, and I thought, why would you bring someone all the way from the UK
Mm-hmm.
when you've got an incredible leader there already in church?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it got to the day, and I said to Dee, when I knew they were going to call, I said, this isn't going to be us. We've just got to work out, okay, God, what's next for us? If we
Mm-hmm.
need to stay, how do we stay well? And this was sort of coming to the end of COVID, still in COVID, but coming to the end of COVID. And they rang me and said, we're just pleased to say that we would really like you to come to the church. I'm like, oh,
Okay, it's happening.
I know. And so, you know, we moved, but we weren't able to be here. So literally my daughter and I moved on the 22nd of June, 2021. And we landed in Toronto, had to do the 3 days quarantine.
Mm-hmm. Quarantine.
And then we flew to Saskatchewan, and then we had to do 11 days in a hotel here, just because of the house that we were getting wasn't ready. My wife and son were still in the UK. And so the first time we ever heard, saw, been in Saskatoon was when we landed to take on the job.
Oh my goodness.
So I know. So that was an interesting, shock. In some ways, it was great because we landed in June and it was so warm. It was beautiful. I'm like,
Yes.
what are you guys complaining? Minus 30, minus 40. This is plus 30.
It's
I
like
don't know what you
this
guys are
is
complaining about.
yeah.
So we got settled in, and you know, church literally, as we came out of our quarantine, was the first Sunday that churches were allowed to meet in Saskatoon. And so we tentatively started church in the room rather than online. And it was a big culture shock. I made a lot of presumptions. You know, you guys aren't Americans, so you must be almost English. No, Canadians are nowhere near that. My humor doesn't always translate well. Sarcasm doesn't come across well, and there was a whole heap of stuff that had gone on there and is still going on there that just caused it not to work out well either for the church or for us. And it was really sad because we grew to love the people there, and they let me go after a couple of years. And that's when, you know, for Dee and me really, it was like, I don't know what's going on here. We moved everything. We gave up. We left family behind. We left our daughter. We had to rebuild family, friends, church, community, and then it just all went like that. Yeah. And so it was horrible. You know, who was it? Was one of the monastic guys wrote the book Dark Night of the Soul. I can't remember who wrote it. And that was it for me. Like, God, I don't understand. And in that time, you know, God showed his faithfulness in so many ways. We got down to our last mortgage payment. We'd bought a house. We got down to our last mortgage payment, and I rang a realtor who'd been part of the church. He'd left when we left. And I said to him, hey, Dennis, look, you know, we need to sell the house. I think we're going to have to return to the UK. And he just said no. Like, sorry? He said, no, I'm not going to do that. Why? You're a realtor. No, I don't.
You're a realtor. That's my house.
Yeah. It's my house. It's money for you. I said, no. I don't believe it's the right thing. Let's give it a month. And if God hasn't done something in a month, we'll talk and we'll sell it quick. And there's a guy just turning down money.
Wow.
And in that month, I met the guy who was to become my boss, Brian, and I started working for a ministry organization called World Serve Ministries, and we work with pastors and churches in persecuted regions. And so I got to know him through the guy who was actually the guy that didn't get the job when I got the job. He was the associate pastor at the time, but then he moved into senior leadership into another church, and he rang me and he said, "Hey, you need to meet this guy in my church. He knows people all over the place and he might be able to point you in the right direction." So we sat down and he said, "Hey, I'd like you to come and work for me." But so this was in the August, September time. He said, "But I don't have a job till December. I just need to get a job, Brian." He said, "Well, actually, my son has got a construction firm and he might have some laboring work. Would you do that?" And I just said, "Yes, I'll do whatever it takes." And so for 3-4 months, I think, how old was I then? 55, 56. It's okay doing construction work at 56 when you've been doing it since you're 20. But when you start at 56,
yeah.
And we were working 15 hours a day, which was great.
Man.
I was on an hourly rate, so I earned some good money to replace. But it was like, and I loved it. I loved it. I got to know the guys on the construction field, and I still ended up pastoring them. One of the guys was a mountain of a man, and he and the foreman sometimes like really butted heads. And this one time I just saw this guy jump out of the digger and run at the foreman. I thought he's gonna kill the foreman. So I ran up. I'm like, "Hey guys, calm down," and pulled this big guy away. I'm like, "Mate, what is going on?" And he said the strangest thing to me. He said, "I'm just really scared." And I laughed. I went, "Look at you and look at him." He said, No. Yesterday I went to the doctor and he thinks I might have cancer. Oh, wow. And I said, "Can I pray for you?" He said, "Oh, I would love you to do that." And so literally in the field, laid hands on him, prayed for him, and prayed for healing, prayed for peace, all of that stuff. And we just got on with the day. And later on, when he'd had the tests, it worked out that he didn't have cancer. But I just ended up being the pastor. Not because it was my role title or pay packet, because that's what God had called me to do. And still in touch with some of the guys there. But then out of that, the guy's son was my construction work boss, and then I ended up working for Brian, who was the ministry. And then out of that, we ended up coming to the church where we are now, just because they asked me to speak. Every now and then the previous pastor had left. I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I'll come along." And it was so far out of our comfort zone in terms of style and church and everything, but my son loved it. And so we just thought, we were in a wilderness at the time. We'd wandered around a few churches, and they were all great churches, but our son really struggled after we left the previous church, and so it was a tough time. And just said, okay, if Judah feels at home, we got to make it our home. And out of that, then they asked me to be the pastor, and here we are with the pictures on my wall behind in the office. So
well, okay. I have a couple more questions to ask about that. As you point at the pictures, tell me, who do you have in the pictures behind you?
So I'm trying to work out this one here. Me and my son, probably when he was 3 or 4, and someone behind just took the picture. He'd always stand with me in church, and stand beside me, and so that's actually in church there, and it's a beautiful picture of him when he was a kid. And then this one here, this is the kids. So there's the one up there, that's myself and my wife. That's my wife and my son. I can't even see the other two. That's our daughter Jordan there. I can't see what they are. This is our daughter Taya, and this is a beautiful picture of her when she was in Tanzania, and she's just an amazing young woman now. But she was just there with the kids, and my wife took both daughters at separate times to Tanzania on ministry trips. Still got to take my son on a ministry trip. But yeah, they both affected them, and yeah, they were amazing. So that's more the family one. The one in the middle that's a picture from the rooftop of the church that we eventually bought. And that was a miracle in itself in Newcastle. We were given a significant amount of money to buy a building, and we looked all over the place, and then eventually, just through a set of circumstances and connections that came about because we were in this amazing student union venue in Newcastle University, Northumbria University, and it was one of the best gig venues around, and we just happened to be there. And then they found out that there was some accusations made against us as a church, which really hurt, because we were really strong on the welcome and embracing in terms of sexuality. Gender wasn't and it was more sexuality. And being a social worker, I was part of that background and engaging with people. And some strong accusations were made against us about who we were, or who people thought we were, and we weren't. And so the venue loved us, but said, look, there's nothing we can do. We're going to have to kick you guys out. And we ended up at a little Methodist church. And they were wonderful with us, but it was so removed from the big speakers and lights and everything that we've been used to a guitar and a cajon, and everything else was way too loud. So, and we had to do 2 services on a Sunday afternoon. But out of that, and that was probably the closest I ever came to going, okay, God, I've screwed it up. I am a complete failure as a and that was it was a hard time, but it was an amazing time when the church just really gathered and surrounded us as pastors. But out of that came a connection from a guy who was a trustee at another place, and this church was closing down, and there was a connection into a couple of people in church. And so we managed to buy this Methodist mission hall, and in its heyday, it seated 1,300 people, but with fire restrictions and health and safety, it seated 550, but it was an amazing place. And so we ended up there. I can't even remember the first question. What did you ask me? Oh, man.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Because we are running a little bit out of time here.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I have one of the questions that I have for you here is, do you have a question in mind that you wish that I ask you, or that you wish other people would ask you, because that's your heart, that you love talking about it, that you would want to ask the question and answer the question and share with our audience?
That's a good question. And off the top of my head, what I wish you would ask me would be, how do I feel about church? Because, so one of the things, my wife knows this already, one of the things I want on my gravestone is passion for your house consumed him. And that's what I want. And I don't love the church because I became a pastor. So it wasn't, all right, I'm a pastor now, I guess I got to love the church, so I love you. It was, I became a pastor because I love the church, and I'd seen what church can do in people's lives, and what community and just what could happen when church is authentic. The type of church is high energy, it's lively, and the church in Newcastle was so completely multicultural, but it was young, it was vibrant, and we didn't set out to build it like that. Young people just loved it and they came. So it was amazing, and lots of Nigerians and Ghanaians, and I know they still having the jollof rice wars and who's got the best and all of that sort of stuff. But it was fun, and we built this church And I'd seen what God could do
Yeah.
with broken people as they came into his house. And one of the things that we always used to say was church should be the best place to have your worst day.
Mm.
So when 2-3 years ago, when church became our worst day, we had to decide what we were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would have been so easy for us to go, well, okay, we've been hurt. We're going to back off. That's
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And I got let go on a Thursday, and I rang a really good friend of mine who was a pastor of probably the largest church it still is in Saskatoon. He's since retired. And I said, hey, Marvin, this has just happened. What do I do? He said, come to church. And so that Sunday, we literally were in his church trying to work out, are people gossiping about us? Do they know who we are? You know, they no clue who we were. But there was that shame of what had happened to us and all of that stuff. But we just made the decision. We literally said, if we've been saying church is the best place to have your worst day, then we have to live.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
went to church. And it was so hard every single week. It was so hard. And it didn't get easy because it was just, this is really hard, but we needed to be there. And so we never backed off. We just made it, this is our decision. This is what we do as a family. And we still love church. Still absolutely passionate about church because, you know, it is God's vehicle to bring Jesus to the world. Yes, the kingdom is bigger than the church. I get that. But the church is still central and essential to the message of hope and the gospel of Jesus. And it's still the place that he calls his body. That, you know, when you read through Corinthians, and it's his body. The kingdom isn't called the body. The church is called the body. And so for me and my wife, it's like we choose to love the church in our brokenness and its brokenness as well. And so even in our own failure, in the church's failure, we choose to love. We do love it. And that's it. You know, we gave our life to this thing. And I still fully believe the church should be the best place to have your worst day. And
I like that.
We mess up, the church will let people down. I'll let people down. I'll get let down by people. But when you read God's word in the way that's not individualistic, and it's not this verse is to me, no, this verse is to the church. And essentially, if you read it in terms of Paul was writing his letters to a church, you know, 1 Corinthians, man, that church was messed up.
Yeah.
Wow. But Paul is still saying, I love this church. He was writing it to the church, not to so-and-so in the church. And basically he's saying, you know, those idiots that you sit with, this is how to get on with them. This passage of scripture about love, it's not for people that are easy to love. It's about those people that have really hurt you. Now, go be patient with them. Love them. Be long-suffering with them. The gifts of the Holy Spirit are about how you and I relate to each other. It's not just about me having this feeling of love, joy, peace. It's how do I express that in community? I think we've become, particularly the Western world, when you go to Africa and India, and we've had the privilege of traveling, it's not an individualistic thing unless it's been taken over by Western culture. It's how do we do community together? How do we share the things that we have? I've just been to Cuba, and it's dire out there, but it is, how do we share this thing?
I can hear your heart. Maybe I should have asked you that question like 30 minutes ago, because I can hear your heart, your passion for the church and for God's people. And thank you so much, Pastor John, for what you do. So if anybody in the Saskatoon area or looking for a church to go to and they would like to stop by and visit the church, tell us a little bit about the church where you guys meet and the time.
Okay, so our church is Westgate Alliance Church, and we meet, I don't even know the address, on the corner of Diefenbaker and Centennial on the west side of Saskatoon, 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. We got a great, one of the things that attracted us to the people, and it's an older church, but they just love you as you walk through the door. They really welcome. The welcome is unbelievable, and they are genuine, loving, lovely people. And that's what we loved about it. And, we're just slowly, they wanted us to help. How do we engage with young people? So we're helping them make change to be able to do that, and engage with a wider ethnic diversity and authentically love our neighborhood as well. So that's changes that we're bringing and trying to pass to people through that, because change is tough.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Pastor John, for being with us. And it was fun getting to know you, and fun to hear your heart. We'll keep chatting. But in the meantime, let's say thank you to our listeners, viewers, for spending the time with us. If John's story has encouraged you, I would encourage you to email us at inspirehopepodcast@gmail.com, because we would love to hear your story as well. Because your story, God's story in your life, has the power to encourage or to support in ways that you would not even imagine. Because if I want you to think about, if God can do this in their lives, God can do it in your life as well. So don't feel discouraged, because we serve a great God we can expect great things from. So email us at inspirehopepodcast@gmail.com. And thank you, Pastor John. Until next time.
It's a privilege.